Hey there friends, how's it going? My name is Frank, and today we're looking at two stories from r/Entitled Parents. And the first story is a wild ride between two identical twin sisters. So let's just jump right into it. I debated posting this story because I know some of my family is on Reddit, but I decided that if they see this, I'm not going to care. The woman in this story did some crazy stuff recently, but it doesn't really fit this sub, so I guess that's a story for another time. Telling this story is a good way to vent off some of the steam, I guess. Let's meet the cast. Good cousin, good husband, entitled cousin. So this story doesn't involve me too much, but I know quite a lot about entitled cousin's actions and behaviors through stories family members and good cousin told me. Ever since we were little kids, my cousin, good cousin, and I have been best buds. We lived only a few miles away from one another, so we would bike to each other's houses, play in our backyards, and play video games. Good cousin comes from an extremely wealthy family. Her dad, my uncle, started a business when he was 20, and it has been super successful, to the point there are now several large locations across the globe. Even though this family is crazy rich, they live a very modest lifestyle. They live in a small 2-story home on a few acres of land, and a large pond takes up most of it. The one lavish thing they do is that every 2 or 3 years, they go on a cruise. Good cousin is one of 3 children. She has an older brother and her identical twin sister, entitled cousin. You may think the good twin, evil twin scenario is only seen on the TV screen, but good cousin and entitled cousin are the real world equivalent. Good cousin is kind and generous, while entitled cousin is selfish and entitled. Entitled cousin always had this idea in her head that because her dad was so wealthy, she didn't have to lift a finger in life to get what she wanted. Good things just came to her, good cousin, and their brother. But good cousin had the common sense to know that she can't always rely on daddy's money. Despite getting pretty much everything they wanted growing up, good cousin and her brother never had entitled attitudes. Their parents are also super nice, so entitled cousin was always the evil standout of the family. Entitled cousin's attitude only got worse as time went on. Eventually, entitled cousin got married and had a kid, a boy. Entitled cousin's husband is just as nasty as she is, so they were kind of made for each other. Entitled cousin always wanted to rub her child in good cousin's face, like she wanted to gloat about having a kid before she did. Good cousin had a history of bad relationships, including those that involved verbal and physical abuse. One time, she came to her sister for advice after her boyfriend hit her. Entitled cousin had the nerve to blame her weight and not using makeup to make herself more attractive. Good cousin was afraid to date anyone after her last relationship disaster, but that changed when she finally met the man of her dreams, good husband. I met good husband personally, and he's a giant teddy bear of a guy. He's the perfect guy to help heal good cousin's old wounds and give her the loving, happy life she deserves. Then, nearly 2 years after they met, good cousin and good husband were engaged. The entire family was thrilled that good cousin finally got the man of her dreams, and her father wanted to throw a boatload of money to her to help pay for a beautiful wedding. For future reference, he did the same thing for entitled cousin when she got married. Yet entitled cousin was not happy about how extravagant good cousin's wedding was going to be. Good cousin wanted to be married at Niagara Falls and invite basically everyone she knew, and her father was going to pay for pretty much all of it. Entitled cousin was furious. She talked to good cousin and their father about the wedding, and how all the money being spent better not interfere with the family's upcoming cruise. Yes, they still went on cruises together every few years despite the children being grown and having families of their own. The father said that because of the wedding and how expensive it was going to be, the family cruise would have to be pushed back another year or 2. Entitled cousin practically exploded. She blamed good cousin for taking the cruise away from her and her precious boy, who was 5 at this point. She said she told her son how they were going on a cruise, and how now he's going to be so upset because his selfish aunt wanted to get married instead of giving him a happy week in the tropics. Entitled cousin even had the audacity to demand good cousin to reschedule the wedding for next year, so they could go on the cruise instead. Good cousin, who was normally not a confrontational person, had it with her sister's attitude and told her that if she wanted to go on a cruise, she would have to pay for it herself. Good cousin and her husband were nowhere near as wealthy as their father, and there was no way he was going to reschedule his own daughter's wedding just to give entitled cousin what she wanted. Entitled cousin's ranting went on for weeks, flipping back and forth between blaming her sister for ruining her son's year and begging her father for money to go on a cruise because she and her family deserved it. She drove good cousin to tears, and she ended up calling me up for advice. My only advice to her was to give entitled cousin, who normally gets everything, nothing. And by nothing, I mean don't invite her to the wedding. Like most sisters would do, good cousin wanted entitled cousin to be one of her bridesmaids, as she was a bridesmaid at entitled cousin's wedding. Not inviting her would be a major upset for everyone involved, but it just may be the thing to teach entitled cousin a lesson. So she did just that. Good cousin called up her sister and flat out told her that if she didn't change her attitude, she didn't want it leaving a sour taste at her wedding. Again, entitled cousin blew up, shouting at good cousin, calling her all sorts of names, and again blaming her for the cruise being canceled. Good cousin hung up and decided to not invite her to the wedding. The wedding was amazing, and I ended up being the bridesmaid to take entitled cousin's place. Yes, I was invited to the wedding originally, but good cousin didn't want me to be a bridesmaid only because she knew I hated dresses, and I'd rather wear a suit. But I said I'd wear a dress just for her special day. It's been a few years now, and good cousin and good husband have a beautiful little girl, and have a baby boy on the way. Entitled cousin is still in their lives, and is still nasty as ever, but she doesn't come to her father begging for anything anymore, because after her behavior towards him and good cousin, he threatened to leave her out of the will if she continued to pester either of them. Maybe now that she's not going to get everything handed to her on a silver platter, she'll change her attitude for the better. Or at least that's what we all wish to happen. Wow, this is some major entitlement. Demanding your sister to put off her wedding for selfish reasons is a huge slap in the face. I stand with good cousin here and say you go, girl. Entitled cousin did not deserve your wedding. A little bit of backstory. This happened around May, and I live next to a married couple where the wife has a garden, which from what I've heard, she's had for years. You might think it's just a few pretty blossoms and bushes, but nope. Her entire front left side of her yard and front yard, those patches of dirt you'd see next to the stairs leading to the door, was covered with various plants, flowers, and shrubs of all different sizes, shapes, colors, etc. Enter our entitled kids, both male, with the oldest being 11 and the youngest 9. These two lived across the street on the right from us and had a nasty habit of crossing the street to pick neighbors' flowers with amazing skill, making bouquets for various reasons like special occasions, events, and sometimes just to make mama happy. The worst part is that entitled mom would tell them to do it. Neighbor has repeatedly told the two to stop, to the point where she went over to talk to their mother about it. From what I've heard, it didn't go well. Apparently, entitled mom didn't want to buy bouquets at the store because they were too expensive, and the drive is just a waste of gas. Plus, it's not fair. You have all those flowers and you won't share? How greedy. She would call the cops, but she knew they'd just give her a warning, or take entitled mom's side since around here, the cops are pretty easy to lie to. Instead, she decided to take matters into her own hands. A week later, when I left with my brother for vacation from the house, I found thorny bushes scattered around her gardens, mostly in areas that made it extremely difficult to get through without getting pricked or cut a few hundred times. I found that she planted firethorns, blackthorn, and my favorite, creeping juniper bushes. When I asked, she said simply, "I wish them good luck." Not even a week later, I hear banging on the neighbor's door. Looking out the window, I see the entitled mom fuming in rage, while her kids were next to her equally upset. Some even had bandages on their arm, leg, or face. She looked less of a Karen and more of a semi-fat soccer mom with quite a bit of cash to her name. Haircut wasn't the "bring me your manager," but instead the "my son owns insert random unrelated company that isn't even that serious." Neighbor, may I help? How dare you hurt my children? Explain to me how I hurt your children. I did nothing wrong. Nothing wrong? Nothing wrong? Look! Presenting her kids to her, full of bandages, very upset, and possibly on the verge of crying. Let me guess. Hurt while playing? No! Your death garden did this! My kids are scared of your yard because those plants were hurting them. Do you know how much money it costs to buy them new clothes because their stuff is getting ripped and torn from the thorns? Well, why were they in my garden in the first place? If they stayed away and stopped picking at my garden, this wouldn't have happened and you wouldn't be yelling at me like you have no brain in front of me right now. I planted them because I thought they were beautiful. Not only that, but burglary exists everywhere, so it's perfect protection. After a little back and forth, the entitled mom leaves, but not without the threat of suing her and demanding the thorny bushes be taken away. Luckily, the kids stopped picking at her yard, while entitled mom gave death glares neighbors way whenever the opportunity shows. I'll update if anything happens. Obviously, entitled soccer mom doesn't understand how much time and dedication goes into having a beautiful garden. I absolutely love her neighbor's ingenuity. It doesn't get much better than this. That's it for today, guys. Real quick, I really enjoy making these videos, and only you can help me continue to do it. A simple thumbs up and comment goes a long way and helps out big time. So with that being said, I'll see you tomorrow.